Hello, how are you? I have been a little bit sick, so I may be a bit croaky in this video, so please forgive me. I'm going to speak into 5 things I wish someone had told me before I became a full-time professional psychic. Things that I could have prepared for, cared for, and learnt about, because my experience of becoming a psychic has been I will just make every single mistake in the book that's available and learn that way. Instead of someone saying to me, oh, these are the mistakes I made, and this can help you navigate the landscape of becoming a psychic more efficiently. And I guess this is why I'm actually a mentor and a teacher now, is because I want to help people come into their gifts in a very grounded and safe way, rather than it being a big chaotic nightmare, which was kind of what I experienced. So here's the things that I learned that you should take into consideration, or that you may have also experienced as well. So feel free to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and leave your own experiences down below, and we can all help educate each other. So the first thing that took a really long time to come to terms with, I worked out that people were not going to like me. And as someone that would default into people pleasing and always making sure the other person is happy and their needs are always met, and I would self-abandon in it, I had to really build confidence around what I offered and who I said I was. And this is what prohibited me from coming into this space for a very long time. I was very afraid of the judgment that I would receive. Because I was bullied when I was younger around like coming out as a witch and being a goth. I was a goth in my earlier days, but that's a whole other story. I had a lot of hesitations around coming out and saying, yep, I do this as a profession. This is my full-time job. And when I did, I had the expectation that I would get some pushback. And that happened. I lost some friends, some people who'd known me for a really long time and knew my integrity, then suddenly decided that I no longer had integrity, that I was a bad person, that I was going to hell. All of that fun stuff that comes with being someone that's polarizing and confronting. So I really learned to not take things personally. And how I eventually learned that was because I read people's minds so deeply, and I have a great understanding as to why people do the things they do. So the more deeply I could see others, I could see that them hating me, not liking me, judging me, wasn't actually about me at all. It was about them and how they felt about themselves and what was going on in their life, and how they would project their judgment, anger, and hatred out because they didn't want to acknowledge that that's how they felt about themselves. So I really don't take that stuff personally. I mean, it still does sting. I'm still like, oh, that wasn't a very nice thing to say, or why would they say that? Or what did I do wrong? I still have those thoughts, but I'm not so identified with them. Instead, I'm like, oh, that actually tells me more about them than what it does about me. So I have this real detachment from people not liking me now, because my job actually requires telling people very personal information that's confronting. I've told people that, if they don't change their lives, some serious stuff is going to happen. And if I was worried about whether or not they would like me, it would stop me being able to have access to that level of intuition, and then also being able to deliver it in a way that helps them see really clearly about the next steps they need to take so that they're in alignment and working towards their true purpose. I've also done a lot of therapy around the parts of me that are afraid of judgment, rejection, also acknowledging my own needs. A lot of work has gone into caring for those parts of myself, and that's what I highly recommend. If you're terrified of upsetting someone, you're not going to be a very good psychic. So you need to get used to being able to deliver confronting information in a way that's safe, warm, nurturing, and is receivable. And sometimes it's not going to be received, so you really need to be prepared for that happening. The other thing that kind of happens is when this negativity comes in, it would really shatter my confidence. So I worked on building a lot of rapport, credibility, and evidence around my gifts. And this is why I have so many reviews on Google about the experience people have with me. And I've worked tirelessly to come into a state where I trust my intuition without any type of doubt that comes in. In fact, if I feel doubt, it's actually the other person wanting to doubt the information that I'm delivering them. And that's the space that I'm in now. Not taking it personally, caring for the parts who are afraid of being rejected, and collecting evidence continuously around the services that I offer. So if you're a psychic or a spiritual practitioner, you've probably experienced this. I don't get it so much anymore, but I used to get it a lot when I first started. I would get a lot of people coming to me to validate their fantasies and tell them how amazing and special and spiritual they were, when all they were doing was using me to give them an experience that validated their lies. And people use psychics a lot for this, and psychics also feed on this. If they're also afraid of not being liked or haven't honed their gifts, you can work out pretty quickly that when someone comes to you, you can just tell them everything that they want to hear and make them feel good in the moment. But then later when they leave, they still feel that emptiness and not really having any conclusions or concepts or ideas or ways to step forward in their life. Instead, they're still stuck in that airy-fairy fantasy that's keeping them from actually seeing who they really are. So not feeding people's fantasies, not blaming everyone else and feeding that, yes, it's them, they did all these horrible things to you, it's nothing to do with you, it's all them, and all that stuff that people want when they go see a psychic, I don't do. And this took me a really long time to work out. So I had to really care for the part that wants to make everyone happy with the services that I'm offering, but also have the guts to tell people very uncomfortable things and say, hey, you're in a little bit of a fantasy with that. Here's the reality of what's actually happening. And without judgment, because I too was one of those people that wanted to be validated. I want to be told I'm special, that I'm super psychic, that, you know, in a past life I was Cleopatra. We all want those things because part of us feels inadequate and wants someone else to say, hey, you're actually okay. That's what's really happening underneath all of this. So I'm very aware of that part of myself that wants to be told, oh my God, you're the most amazing psychic in the world. And then I feel so validated. But what's actually happening underneath is the feeling of not feeling good enough, not feeling safe, and needing reassurance that I'm okay. So I've really learned to care for myself and validate myself and see the value that I offer, instead of relying on other people to feed the fantasy that I'm okay when I'm really not. So that's what's happening with those types of people. They don't want to come into reality. They're afraid of seeing the truth, and they go to psychics as a way to feed the fantasy and be validated in a way that other people can't. And this is something you're going to come up against. And what I've done to care for this, so I'm not getting those types of people in, because it's a waste of their time. I'm not going to validate them. I'm not going to make them feel good. Then they're going to be pissed off because they have an expectation and I haven't delivered on it. So I have a lot of boundaries in place when people book in. If you've been on my social media, you see that there's a pinned post that says, this is the type of psychic I am. I'm not going to validate your fantasies. I'm not going to blame everyone else for the things that are happening to you. I'm not your psychic if this is what you're wanting. And then I outline exactly the services that I offer. So it does deter a lot of people from coming to me just to get their fantasy validated. So when people are coming to me, they're coming to me for a specific reason. And it's usually they're at a crossroads, they feel very stuck, and they're not able to move on with their life in a way that's helping them. So they come and see me. So having boundaries is so important. This also includes emotional, energetic, and professional boundaries. Because I used to people please, I didn't have any boundaries, and then people would take advantage of that and I would get super drained. which made my gifts, my business, completely unsustainable, and I would hit a brick wall and be exhausted. Now I've done a lot of work around boundaries and being okay defending those boundaries in a way that's respectful to myself and others. So getting really good at saying no in a professional way, sticking to the time limit when you are doing a reading, and having really strong boundaries of what you will allow yourself to read. This also comes into, like, I don't go into graphic detail with people's trauma. I don't tune directly into it. And sometimes I'll get that where people were like, I want you to tell me what that traumatic event was and exactly what happened and exactly what I felt and who was involved. And I'm like, no, I'm not tuning into graphic details around your trauma, because as soon as it's in here, it doesn't go away. And I learned that the hard way. If people are wanting this from you in a session as well, it means that they haven't processed this event and they're trying to get you to feel it for them. And this is something that happens completely unconsciously. They're not even aware that they're doing it. And probably due to the experiences they've had, it's never really been safe for them to acknowledge how they really feel or felt in that moment. So they're trying to work out how to navigate that scenario, which is super confronting. And this is the other reason I have boundaries. I don't read into people's trauma or traumatic details excessively because it doesn't help them, it doesn't help me, and I'm not a therapist. So having really clear professional boundaries will absolutely save you in the long run from exhaustion and burnout. Now, this one was really surprising for me. I was not expecting it, but it's just gradually been happening the more and more I do this as a profession. My body is super sensitive. Because I worked out that my body is my main intuitive antenna, what's happening with my body is when I go into session with someone, the antenna turns on, it connects to the other person's body, it grabs the information, it comes back to mine, and then it plays out the emotions and feeling states and sensations that are happening in their body in mine. Because I've done so much emotional work and understanding sensations in the body, because emotions and sensations in the body are universal, what it means for you means the same thing for me. If they're sad, I feel the sadness in the same way. What this means though is because I've come so intensely into my body, I'm very aware of my body, I have a relationship with it, it's constantly communicating the subtlest information to me when I'm in session. What this means outside of the session is my body is super sensitive. I'm sensitive to light, to the sun, to noises, to sounds, to music, to movement, to environments, and to other people, because this is my antenna and it's picking up information all of the time. Now, I've done the usual things like grounding, protection spells, clearing my energy, clearing my emotions, guarding myself from environments, all of that usual typical stuff that you would do. But I'm so surprised at how sensitive my body is regarding everything, including what I put into it and what I eat. I used to drink quite a bit, but now I hardly ever drink because of the sensitivity and the impact it has on my body. And I was never expecting that. So I'm curious if this is something you've also experienced. Because the more I do this work, the more I come into my body, the more psychic I become, the more sensitive I am to my environment, people, and anything that goes in here. It's been an interesting experience. So this leads me on to number 4, and this is probably the stereotypical thing that everyone says, and you would have heard me say it before, but I was not prepared for the amount of emotional work that I would have to do to be this psychic and be this successful. I can't even tell you the layers that I've been through in my mind and have felt in my body. It's been a complete shit show, roller coaster, horror film. Sometimes I think about the stuff that I know about myself and I'm like, oh my God, did that really happen? Did I really feel that? How much more of this have I suppressed? Like, I just keep getting more and more and more and more curious about what the hell is going on in here. I learnt very early on that the more emotional work I did, the more this channel was clear, and then the more psychic I became. It also gave me a really deep understanding of emotions, because I'm reading people's emotions as my specialty. And emotions, once you've processed your own, become information about the other person. So for me to really understand someone else's emotional experience on a deep level, I had to understand my own. And this is a really interesting thing I notice in the spiritual community. Everyone's so quick to want to help everyone else, but they're not actually helping themselves in the meantime. The reason I've developed such a strong sense of psychic awareness is because I've done the inner work, continue to do the inner work, and see myself at that depth. The deeper I see myself, the deeper I see the other person. And it also helps me be more psychic because I've managed my emotions in a way that they're not interrupting or clouding my psychic awareness. I'm not getting activated in the session or going into a state of fear or worried about the other person's judgment because I've done that work on myself. So if you truly want to be an incredible healer or a psychic, the emotional work is paramount. I say it's more important than developing the psychic awareness itself. And I know that sounds insane and it's the same old story, but I heard it and I didn't know or realize until I felt it, until I started to get curious about what is the story that my mind is telling me and what is actually the truth. So make sure you're doing the inner work, you have a therapist, you have other modalities supporting your body and your emotional experience. It's so incredibly important. Because I'm holding space for so many people weekly, I need people to hold space for me for stuff that comes up emotionally. Because otherwise I'm just caring for the needs of others and abandoning and neglecting myself, which inevitably always leads to resenting what you do, resenting other people, lacking empathy, and not being able to hold space in a grounded and healthy way. I'm in my 4th or 5th year now of being a psychic, so that's a long time working full time. I probably do about 15 readings on average a week, plus students and group work, so I'm working with a lot of people consistently. So my mental health and how my body is paramount to me showing up in this position. The next thing to take into consideration is your people skills. If you don't like people and you don't trust people, you're not going to be able to work with people, let alone get them to listen to what you're saying. Half of the job of being a psychic like I am is communication. I'm interpreting images, sounds, feeling, and sensations. I've had to get really good at understanding what it is that guides and their minds are trying to tell me, and also how to communicate it in a way that's relatable, that makes sense, that's relevant to the client's experience at the time. And that is a difficult skill that's taken me a very long time to learn. And it's something that I'm constantly working with my students, because it doesn't matter how psychic you are, how much information you're getting, if you can't communicate it in a way that's receivable, you've lost hope, because you're not going to be able to get the attention of the client and give them the information that they need. Secondly, around this communication, understanding how to have relationships with people is paramount. You're working with people. It's a relationship. When they come into your space, it's a relationship. It's a co-creation. So if you're not really sure how to navigate having healthy relationships, strong boundaries, good communicational skills, empathy, you're going to have a very difficult time in working with people. I may not be the most psychic person in the universe, right? There's always someone that's more psychic or better than you. But I've done so much work on understanding how to navigate relationships with people, creating trust and rapport and making sure they feel safe, making sure I'm trauma informed and I'm communicating in a way that's effective. And I'm holding space for them in a way where they feel like I am present with them. I'm actually being present. You also need to be able to be a really good listener and be able to track the person and know how they're feeling and responding to the information that you're giving them. Because sometimes the information I'm giving people is so confronting, and I'm tuned into their body and I'm feeling their responses. I don't want to overwhelm them in the session. I want to care for them and make sure that they're able to receive the information that I'm giving them and feel held in the space if they're feeling emotional or even at times anxious. So this is a skill that's taken me a very long time to learn. And it's also been very confronting because I've had to look at my past relationships with people and take ownership of where I wasn't communicating effectively, of where I wasn't present, where I wasn't able to hold space, where I wasn't able to voice what I was actually truly feeling and what the truth was in that moment. So once again, it's coming back to yourself. It's learning about relationships, how to care for the body, how to have amazing boundaries, how to show up in your profession professionally. All of these things are paramount, and I just didn't take it into consideration when I first started out. I just thought all that mattered is as long as I'm super psychic, everything else will just work out. But that's not the truth. The being psychic part was always there. It was everything else I had to develop along the way. So many different things that I wish someone had told me that I had to learn to do before I started out on my journey. So now I'm hoping that I can impart this wisdom onto you. I hope this gives you more clarity around what it takes to be a professional psychic. Or if you're thinking about it, these are things to take into consideration and slowly and gently work on. And obviously, if you're already in this industry and you have your own experiences, please feel free to share down below. I'm really curious about what this experience has been like for you and what obstacles you've had to overcome to do your purpose.